You have exactly 3 seconds to like and subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, I'll appear in your dreams tonight. To ask for a donation for that cup of coffee, link below.
Imagine you could travel back in time to 18th century Vietnam. You are looking for directions to your great-grandfather's house. Along the way, you'll notice signs and directions written in characters that look very much like Chinese characters. You don't understand anything, and as a result, you're very likely to get lost in your own country. Unless you brought a dictionary of NNM script. Yes, you are in Vietnamese society where Chữ Nôm is the official writing system. Even to this day, Vietnamese people are aware of the existence of the NNM script as an integral part of our national history and culture. But do you really understand this type of writing? You are in the 18th century. Now let's go back in time a little further to the period of Chinese rule. You are in the 18th century. Now let's go back in time a little further to the period of Chinese rule. When the Chinese came to rule our country, they introduced Chinese characters into the curriculum with the aim of assimilating the Vietnamese people. Our ancestors recognized the convenience of Chinese characters, so they came up with the idea of borrowing this type of script. Our ancestors recognized the convenience of Chinese characters, so they came up with the idea of borrowing this type of script. However, learning Chinese characters is difficult because each character has a different pronunciation in different regions of China. Now let's pause for a moment and make a few comparisons. We are probably all very familiar with characters like accent. They can be read in many different languages, but the meaning remains the same in every language. Chinese characters are, essentially, a type of writing system. We are probably all very familiar with characters like accent. They can be read in many different languages, but the meaning remains the same in every language. Chinese characters are, essentially, a type of writing system, similar to ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. Chinese characters are used to represent meaning rather than syllables. In linguistic terms, Chinese characters are ideographic characters. So why not take the meaning of the Chinese characters and read them in a way that Vietnamese people can understand? That's how ancient Vietnamese people borrowed Chinese characters to express words and phrases in the Vietnamese language. During that period, Chinese characters were read according to Sino-Vietnamese pronunciation. For example, the character thos will have a Sino-Vietnamese pronunciation of to. Chinese characters whose pronunciations have been adapted to Vietnamese are called Sino-Vietnamese characters, possessing both spoken and written language. Vietnamese culture was further strengthened during the period of Chinese rule. The results have been proven by history. Despite a millennium under Chinese rule, the Vietnamese were not assimilated. It can be said that the most important prerequisite for the birth of the NNM script was the Sino-Vietnamese pronunciation. In fact, Sino-Vietnamese pronunciation is still widely used in daily life today. However, Chinese and Vietnamese are two different languages. Chinese has only 4 tones while Vietnamese has 6. Therefore, even though we borrowed characters from the Chinese alphabet, there are still purely Vietnamese vocabulary words that cannot be expressed in Chinese characters. In 938, Ngo Quyen defeated the Southern Han Army on the Bac Dang River, ending 1,000 years of Chinese rule. Vietnam entered a period of independence and self-reliance. It was also from this period that the Vietnamese people's awareness of having their own writing system, used to record their own sounds, became even stronger. Driven by the need to record their mother tongue, the Vietnamese people, building upon the foundation of Chinese characters, created a new writing system called Chữ Nôm. In the early days, The Vietnam script was used to record the sounds of the Vietnamese language in the form of Chinese characters. Linguists call this usage loan sharking, meaning borrowing Chinese characters with syllables similar to Vietnamese sounds to represent a Vietnamese word with a completely different meaning. Along with the greater stability of Sino-Vietnamese pronunciation, the Vietnam script was also gradually improved. Besides borrowing characters, the Vietnamese also incorporated another method of constructing Vietnam characters, in which a new Vietnam character would be formed by combining two existing Chinese characters. Of those two Chinese characters, one will be phonetic, meaning it suggests how to pronounce the word, while the other will be suggestive. This technique is called harmonious sound. We will analyze the structure of Vietnam characters according to the phonetic harmony principle in detail later in the video. In its early stages of development, certainly could not have been perfected immediately. As Sino-Vietnamese pronunciation stabilized and Vietnamese life developed further, the Vietnam script gradually improved, became complete, and became an integral part of Vietnamese social life. In his research work, Nom Script Origin, Structure and Evolution, researcher Dao Dian wrote, Nom script officially appeared only when the demands of society required people to create a sufficient number of characters for use in various aspects of life. Due to the demands of social, economic, and political activities, people needed a script that was easier to understand and read than Chinese characters, and its dissemination was limited to the upper classes only. After hundreds of years of refinement, by the end of the Li dynasty, the Vietnam script was finally perfected in both structure and grammar and put into use in daily life. So, what is the structure of the Vietnam script? The first thing we need to remember is that the Vietnam script was built on the basis of Chinese characters written according to Sino-Vietnamese pronunciation. Basically, there are three ways to construct a Vietnam character loanwords: phonetic combinations, and, as we mentioned earlier in the video, the early Vietnam script was essentially Chinese characters written in Sino-Vietnamese pronunciation to represent purely Vietnamese vocabulary. Let's take an example like this. The Chinese character Wo means hunt or final. Its Sino-Vietnamese pronunciation is mat, because the Sino-Vietnamese pronunciation of this word is similar to face. Ancient Vietnamese people used this word simply to mean face. The practice of borrowing the sound of a word from Chinese to represent a word in Vietnamese is called false borrowing. It should be noted that a single character can have multiple pronunciations, and a single pronunciation can be written using different NMM characters. The second way to form an NM character is through phonetic harmony. Simply put, phonetic harmony is the process of creating NM characters from two Chinese characters, one suggesting the sound and the other suggesting the meaning. Let's take this NM character as an example. This NM character is pronounced con, and is formed by combining two Chinese characters and Qi and Kui. The Chinese character, Z means child. This is suggestive text. Thus, we can understand that the NM character, con, child has a meaning related to children. The character, kun, is a character with suggestive sound. The sounds, and con, are quite similar, so we can somewhat deduce the pronunciation of the NM character, con. The Chinese character, the Z means child. This is suggestive text. Thus, we can understand that the NRM character, con, child, has a meaning related to children. Combining both the suggested and the phonetic elements, we get the NM character, con, meaning small, little one. The second meaning of the word, con, child, was used by the poet Ho Xuan Huang in the last line of her NM poem, Self-Reflection. 听情山孙, a tiny little piece of love shared. 情山孙, 情山孙. Besides the two methods of phonetic borrowing and phonetic harmony, NM characters are also constructed in another way: ideographic combination. Essentially, Okokai is the process of combining two Chinese characters with complementary meanings to create a new NM character with a new meaning. Look at this NM character. This NM character is pronounced tree, heaven. Please remember that there is no word in Chinese that sounds like heaven. This is a completely Vietnamese word. Ancient Vietnamese people borrowed two Chinese characters, then Ki meaning sky and Sha meaning above, and combined them to create the NM character, tree. However, the consultation method was rarely used in the construction of NRM characters. The two most commonly used methods are phonetic substitution and phonetic harmony. Alright, so we have the M script. We also have three ways to construct a complete NMM character. So what will we use this type of writing for? Initially, the NM script was only used to record people's names, place names of villages, so on. At this time, Chinese characters were still the dominant writing system in Vietnamese society, because the ruling class still believed that Chinese characters were superior and more intellectual. They continued to use them for administrative documents and records. NM script was only used when a word could not be expressed by any Chinese character, or when you go to a temple, shrine, or pagoda for worship. Pay attention to both sides of the entrance. You will find a pair of couplets. These couplets can be written in Chinese characters, Nam carat, or a combination of both. The NM script also played a role in translation work. Imagine, with the majority of the common people having no access to Chinese characters, how could we convey classical works, from stories to Confucian or Buddhist texts? To them, that means translating those works into the NM script. Many literary works were translated into NM script to reach the common people, such as Nguyen Ditu's Trum K Men La Dc, or the Analects in the commentary on the Book of Poetry, which is a book that translated and explained the entire Book of Poetry in NM script, and was printed during the Tien dynasty. The NM script was also used to record the rich treasury of Vietnamese folk tales. Before the invention of writing, the ancient Vietnamese people used oral tradition to preserve folk tales and fairy tales for future generations. This format presents some difficulties because each person has their own way of telling the story, not to mention the risk of folk tales being lost. The creation of Chữ Nôm provided the ancient Vietnamese with an excellent tool for recording folk works, designed specifically for purely Vietnamese vocabulary. The NM script proved effective in recording Vietnamese folk tales, thereby helping to preserve the nation's treasure trove of folk tales for generations to come. Without the M script, it's likely that by the 21st century, very few people would know the content of Tiem Sam or other Vietnamese fairy tales. A part of Vietnamese culture will be lost. However, the greatest value of NM script lies in its contribution to the creation of Vietnamese culture through literary works. While during the Lai dynasty, the Vietnamese people still used Nam script only in a limited way, mainly for recording names of people and places or describing vocabulary not found in Chinese characters. By the Tran dynasty, the first literary works in Nam script began to appear. This is Han Thuyen. He was an official during the Tran dynasty, earning his doctorate in 1247. Han Thuyen was the first to use the rules of Tang dynasty poetry to compose NM poetry, contributing to the development and popularization of NM script in the country. People still frequently mention the NM poem, Eulogy for the Crocodile, and call him the founder of NM poetry, following in the footsteps of Ashan Thuyen. Many other great names and works were created in Chua Vietnamese script by the Vietnamese people themselves. During the later La dynasty, it is impossible not to mention Nguyen Tri's Quoc Am Thi Tap, Sa collection of national language poems. This is the first anthology of poems in Vietnamese written in the NM script in the history of Vietnamese literary creation. We also cannot overlook the king who created the most glorious feudal period in Vietnamese history, King La Than Tong, along with his collection of poems, Hong Duc Quoc Am Thi Tap. Turkian Jingi Tri Ngai and Bae Kim also left behind for posterity collection of poems in NTM script titled Bikuchi Vin Quoc Tinku The. The female poets also proved to be equally talented. I'm sure that in Vietnam, hardly anyone is unaware of Queen of Nam poetry, Ho Xuan Huang, with her incredibly rich collection of Nam poems, including works that have become synonymous with her name, such as Floating Rice Cakes, the Self-Reflection series, the Jackfruit, and many other Nam poems. Vietnamese NM poetry can be written in many forms. Not only were Tang dynasty poetic rules applied to create Han dynasty regulated verse, but folk poetic forms such as 6/8 verse or 7/6/8 verse were also used flexibly. Using the 7-syllable, 6-line verse, we can look at the NM script translation of Chain Funangam Kuk, translated by Don Thi Diem. As for the Latasi Bati 6/8 verse form, Vietnamese people can proudly name a series of classic works such as Nguyen Du's Truden Cuju, Nguyen Chibu's Truan LDC Vin Tin, or anonymous verse narratives like Puich Pai Ng Phi Ho, Tiban Transis Ho, and so on, with the NM script. It is clear that ancient Vietnamese people were able to freely express their thoughts, styles, and viewpoints on all aspects of society. The NAM poems that have been preserved to this day affirm the creativity and remarkable application of the Vietnamese people, and also reflect the various social development processes throughout Vietnam's history. Besides historical records, NM poetry is entirely an important historical document that serves as evidence of a civilized, independent, creative, self, and benevolent Vietnam. It should also be emphasized that NAM script was used in administrative documents of Vietnam, That was under the Ho dynasty and the Tay Sun dynasty. After ascending the throne in 1400, Ho quietly implemented many bold reforms, one of which was the use of Nam script to revitalize Vietnamese culture. During the Tay Sun dynasty, all administrative documents were written in Nam script, and Emperor Quang Trung was the first to introduce Nam script into the examination system. NM script became the main writing system of the Vietnamese people throughout the 24 years of the Tay Sun dynasty. Unfortunately, neither the Ho dynasty nor the Tay Sun dynasty lasted long. However, the efforts of both dynasties in using and spreading the NM script as the Vietnamese writing system are highly commendable, because they demonstrate the strong national spirit and the will for independence and self-reliance of the Vietnamese people. Perhaps because every true Vietnamese person possesses national pride. The NM script was affectionately given another name, national sound or national language, meaning the sound of the country or the language of the country. Chinese characters have never been called that, and the MTM script would become even more widespread if the efforts of the H-Dao and T-Esquian dynasties had achieved further success. But that's a story of history. History has its own path, and we can only try to adapt to its unpredictable course. But what if Vietnamese people were still using the NM script today? We all know that Western missionaries began their efforts to transcribe the sounds of the Vietnamese language using the Latin alphabet as early as the 16th century, thereby paving the way for the creation of the national script, which has become the official writing system of Vietnam today. Many people still believe that the creation of the Vietnamese Cuquin Ngutu script meant the demise of the NM script, that the NEM script is now just a beautiful memory or a cultural heritage left behind by our ancestors. But today we want to introduce you to a different perspective, that the NM script still exists, at least in terms of syllables. As for the written form, it has been converted to the Latin alphabet. That's right. Remember that when Western missionaries arrived in Vietnam, the Vietnamese already had their own complete NM script system. However, for them, the NM script is relatively difficult to read, and to aid their missionary work, they came up with the idea of transcribing the pronunciation of NM characters using the Latin alphabet. The reason Western missionaries were able to do that was because the Vietnamese language is very rich in syllables and the NM script has a high degree of phonetic expressiveness, unlike Chinese characters, which are only ideographic and therefore often contain homophones when transcribed into Latin, making them incomprehensible to the reader, as seen in this transcription of a Chinese poem. Of course, transcribing the NM script into the Latin alphabet also takes a lot of time. When the Latin alphabet was refined and perfected, it proved superior to the NM script in terms of efficiency because with 29 letters, users could arrange the letters to create countless words, whereas with an NM script, each word required a separate letter to represent it. Thus, according to this view, the NM script also played a role as the foundation for the formation of the national script. The Vietnamese language still has the same number of syllables, all of which can be represented by both NM script and Cuc Nq script. But Cuc Nq script is more convenient and efficient. So Vietnamese people quickly adopted and learned this script. After thousands of years of nation building and defense, history has made Vietnam the only country in the East Asian cultural region that does not use pictographic writing. But whether Vietnamese people currently use Chu Nrm or Chu Cuquin Ngu, it is still a script unique to the Vietnamese people, used to record the Vietnamese language. To conclude the video, we would like to quote researcher Vu The Khoi. It is necessary to distinguish and understand correctly that the Vietnamese language has only one writing system, which may include Nam script or Latinized script.